Welcome to the State of the Nation. I'm your host, Mike Sham, and joining us today is the leader of Action SA inside the South African Parliament, Athol Trollip. Athol, welcome back to the State of the Nation. Good to have you.
Good morning, Mark. Nice to be back on your show.
Now, I know that the seventh Parliament has begun sitting. You there, it didn't take you long before you found your stride and found an issue that had your name attached. And the biggest issue that you've been part of has been the questioning of the conduct of our Justice Minister, Thembi Simelane. What do you make of this, Athol? Where do we stand?
Okay, Mark, thanks very much. I want to just make one comment. I was last in Parliament 10 years ago. I didn't think it was that long ago, but time flies. And I'm back there now, and a lot of things have changed. Half of Parliament burnt down, still hasn't been repaired, which is a tragedy. Also, the ANC have lost their majority. There's now a government of national unity, or a grand coalition with 10 political parties. And there's also what they phrase or term the Progressive Caucus, including MK, the EFF, PAC, NCC, and a few other parties, which is actually, for all intents and purposes, a regressive caucus, not progressive at all. And we're the biggest opposition party that's not in either of those camps. So we are pretty much like the fulcrum in Parliament, I believe. We're right in the middle, and it's a good position to be. So after 10 years, I arrived back in Parliament, and the sixth Parliament was characterized by how they dealt with or didn't deal with state capture. The fifth Parliament during Zuma was the time of state capture. So I walked straight into something that I really didn't expect after all the calamity that goes with state capture and the Zondo Commission. I read a story by the Daily Maverick that the current Justice Minister, when she was the mayor of Polokwane, her municipality had invested 350 million rand in the VBS Mutual Bank. Now, that was unlawful at the time because municipalities were not allowed to invest in mutual banks. And no sooner had the middleman, Gundo Wealth Solutions, who had made the investment, no sooner had the commission started paying to him, and he received around 24 million rand in commissions. The then mayor of Polokwane, Mayor Simelane, made a loan from him of 575,000 rand. And for 4 years, she didn't pay any interest and made no payments. And then on the day that the investigation into the investments of Polokwane municipality into VBS broke, she made her first payment of 283,000 rand, followed by two others in the space of about 5 months, totaling 850,000 rand. So she paid nearly 47% of the original capital amount in 3 payments. So I wrote immediately to the Public Protector on Monday the 26th to say to her that I believe this needed independent investigation. Same day, I wrote to the President to advise him of what I was doing so that he could be aware that this was happening. And I also wrote to the Speaker to ask her to provide us with the Minister's declarations, because public representatives have to declare all loans, interest, properties, businesses, etc. The Public Protector wrote back to me, Mark, and said that she would respond to me within 10 days. That deadline has come and gone. It was Wednesday, and I haven't heard from the Public Protector. So I've written back to her to say, you've missed your own deadline. Please advise what you're doing about this matter of national importance. And if she doesn't do anything about it, I'm going to have no option but to lay criminal charges against the minister, because she's appeared before the Justice Committee, and we asked her a whole lot of questions. And the more questions were asked, the more vague and blurred this matter became. She provided no material evidence. She provided no documentation. And in fact, the more she answered, the deeper she got. So this is where we are now. And I believe that South Africans cannot have another minister that is conflicted, certainly not a minister of justice. Sorry, that was a very long introduction.
That was a very long introduction, but we'll forgive you, Athol, because you do it well. But now, this particular portfolio, obviously, you mentioned, especially in a country like South Africa, just how important the Ministry of Justice is. But there's also been another facet that seems to be getting no airplay, and that is that this Minister of Justice has withheld access to certain files that the Special Investigative Unit needs to prosecute their state capture, the state capture findings, right? So you literally have the Minister of Justice running obstruction to the SIU for state capture cases. And, as I've said a few times on the State of the Nation, this is when things get real, right? It's one thing to say, did she or didn't she steal money? Is she a thief? Is she just like the rest? But in actual fact, she's already delivered on what she's been paid for, hasn't she?
So, Mark, I'm very pleased you picked up that point, because I'm not claiming to be the sharpest crayon or pencil in the parliamentary pack, not by any means, but I've been around the block a bit, and I've got a political nose. And I'd written to the president already before this Polokwane VBS investment debacle became exposed in public. I'd written to the president about lack of access by the National Prosecuting Authority to the Zondo database. And the president assured me in his correspondence back that he had just signed a regulation to allow that to happen. Now, when the NPA appeared before the Justice Committee this week on Monday, Shamila Batoy and the NPA were bemoaning the fact that they haven't been able to get access to this data and all the records. And she said that the previous Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, had committed in 2022 to provide access to the NPA of all of this evidence and data, because it's anomalous. And I also raised it in a public statement and in a parliamentary follow-up question, that isn't it curious that the only country that has secured a prosecution in the South African state capture case is the United States of America, who prosecuted Mr. Ayers for corruption and for corrupting SAA officials in South Africa. Now, we as our own country, we know that the state capture happened. We've got volumes and a whole terabyte of, I don't know how many million gigabytes that is, of information from the Zondo Commission. We spent over R1 billion on it, but nobody has been successfully prosecuted yet. So now we have Ronald Lamola in 2022 saying he would provide the evidence. I have got correspondence from the president that says he is now signed a regulation that this evidence and data can be made available to the NPA. That was at least 2 or 3 weeks ago. And on Monday this week, the NPA was in Parliament saying they don't have access to the data. And the self-same minister was saying in the committee meeting on Monday, and when we met her last Friday, she was saying she has no influence over the NPA. Now, Section 179 of the Constitution makes it very clear that the National Director of Public Prosecutions has to prosecute and take prosecution decisions in concurrence with the minister. So the minister has a very direct influence and authority over the NPA, and having her conflicted because she has this case to answer, is really problematic, Mark. So all of these things are now compounding. And this is why it's so difficult for us in this country to have successful prosecutions and then sending people responsible for state capture to jail. And now the chickens are coming home to roost.
Now, if we go back to the questioning of the minister in that when she came to answer to Parliament, two of the people that were leading the charge were Glynis Breitenbach and Heloise Denner from the DA and the Freedom Front Plus, respectively. And they're both part of the Government of National Unity, and they weren't holding back on their questioning of the minister. But it seems like you're fighting a one-man battle in trying to get some kind of accountability from this minister. What is the role of Glynis Breitenbach and Heloise Denner in taking this forward?
Look, Mark, I must say I was quite impressed with most of the members of the Justice Committee with their line of questioning and holding the minister to account. But as I said in the beginning, I'd have no faith in the parliamentary mechanisms to hold people to account. I have no faith. We have seen what happened with Floyd Shivambu, who was implicated in receiving VBS money irregularly. I think he had a slap on the wrist of 1 month's salary being deducted in Parliament after receiving hundreds of thousands, if not millions of rands, he and his brother. We've seen Parliament exonerate President Ramaphosa for the Pala dollars that were in his couch. Now, that's very clearly an infraction of the exchange control regulations. So I'm sorry to say I have no faith in parliamentary mechanisms holding senior executives to account. Glynis Breitenbach and Heloise Denner, I thought, asked some very sharp questions, and that's what we expect from people in Parliament. We don't represent our parties or ourselves there. We represent people, and the people want the truth. So I thought they acquitted themselves well. But I'm not saying I'm the sole crusader here. I'm just doing my job. I want answers to the questions, and I'm not going to give up. I'll use every parliamentary lever I can, but I'll also use litigation if necessary, and certainly lay criminal charges if the public protector doesn't act or doesn't even respond to me by the end of today. If I've heard no response from her office today, I will go and lay criminal charges against the minister, and I will do what I have to do to fulfill my responsibility as a member of Parliament and the leader of Action SA in Parliament.
Now, we've seen compromised public protectors before. We had Busisiwe Mkhobane, who's now an esteemed cabinet colleague of yours for the MK party, run obstruction for Jacob Zuma, even after the days of Jacob Zuma no longer being president. We now seem to have another minister, another public protector, Kholeka Kgaleka, who seems to be absolutely there to run interference for Cyril Ramaphosa. She doesn't look like a public protector at all. She looks like a presidential protector.
Well, Mike, just to fix a few things there. First of all, the former disgraced public protector who was impeached is currently a member of EFF. I don't know for how long.
Maybe EFF, sorry, man.
She might end up in the...
Sorry, maybe I'm a little bit ahead of time, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you are.
Maybe this only goes out next week, you never know.
Yeah, so who knows what will happen there. But, there's also the matter of Judge Hlophe. Former Judge Hlophe was also impeached, serving on the JSC. These are all very interesting times in our Parliament. And certainly, if there are legal lacunas, they're going to have to be addressed, because it's just unimaginable that you can be an impeached judge and an impeached public protector and then come and preside over issues around the public protector and also in the Judicial Services Commission. But the point is that I sincerely hope that Ms. Kgaleka, the current public protector, I hope she's not a presidential protector, because we just can't tolerate that anymore in South Africa. We can't have any more of it. And it'll be much more difficult, Mark, in the GNU. As I said at the outset, that the arrogant swagger of the ANC has disappeared. The ANC understand now that they don't have an unfettered majority going into Parliament. But I do want to say another thing about that, Mark. And this reinforces why it's important to have parties like Action SA that are not in the GNU or in the Regressive Caucus. The GNU now technically has a bigger majority than the ANC had in the last term of office. And I saw some amazing things within 2 months of being in Parliament. When we were passing the budget, every single budget item that the DA opposed in February, they supported at the end of June. And the EFF and MK opposed every single budget item, all 41 of them. And we as Action SA supported 20 and opposed 21, because we said that we would be a opposition party. We would be critical but constructive. So where we can support something in the interest of South Africans, we will do it. Doesn't matter which party puts anything forward. This week, we voted on a motion by the EFF to set up an ad hoc committee to look into this incidence of, what do you call it? Not ransoming, extortion. And we voted for that. We said we need to get to the bottom of this massive extortion that's happening in this country. So we are going to take the middle ground, and we will support where we can, and we will oppose and hold to account where we have to.
Now, it's great to hear that the role that Action SA is doing down in Parliament. But we have to mention that the role that Action SA is doing up here in the Badlands of Gauteng, where, and you knew this was coming, right? And that is that I am certainly leading the disgruntled Gauteng movement. That's going to be a new party. We're going to wear uniforms. We're going to call each other, everybody's going to call me the leader in chief. We're going to wear uniforms, berets. But we live here in what one can only describe as Gotham City, right? You've got a place that is literally a disgrace. I know we've had a discussion before about your experiences living in what did Crispin Olver call how to steal a city, what the ANC did to Kobeka, where they completely destroyed the place. Well, now they've done whatever they learned back in those days, they've applied with some relish here in Johannesburg. But Action SA, instead of opposing that, has chosen to support that. Can you explain to me why?
Okay, so Mike, we as a party and our president, you've interviewed him a number of times, said we'd never work with the ANC. Many of the parties that are now in the GNU said exactly the same thing. They would never work with the ANC. We all went to this election to replace the ANC, get rid of them. We weren't able to do that. So now we've got some parties in the GNU. And as I said, the political landscape has changed. People have to cooperate. There are no outright majorities. And what was happening in Johannesburg since the DA walked out of a coalition government that they were leading under Mpho Phalatse, they actually walked out of it because they refused to cooperate with the PA, the Patriotic Alliance. During those negotiations, we even said to the DA, we will relinquish 2 of our mayoral committee member positions to the PA to get them in and to keep them in so that we could have a majority in Johannesburg and govern the city better, because we know what happens when the ANC takes over a city. The DA refused to do that, and ironically, they're now in a coalition government with the PA. And what happened then was that the ANC basically took over the city of Johannesburg and appointed Mr. Ahmed Tapelo as the mayor. That didn't last long. It was disastrous. But we all know that he was actually just the tip of the nose of the dog, and the tail wagging the dog was the ANC. Then they replaced him with Mr. Gwamanda, and that was more disastrous even than the previous term of office of Dada Marero. So what then happened was that the ANC approached us and said, could you come and help us to get some stability and sanity in Johannesburg? And we as a party said, all right, we will cooperate with you, but we don't want to go into a coalition with you. We don't trust you in government. Got a really terrible track record in government. But you give us the speaker position so that we can control the legislature and some oversight positions of chairman of portfolio committees, and you can appoint whoever you want to appoint as the mayor, but we're going to hold you to account. Now, this is very early days, Mike. We, in our new arrangement, are not responsible for Gotham City, absolutely not responsible for Gotham City. What we're trying to do is to fix Gotham City. So that took a lot of persuasion and discussion in our party to move from saying we'll never work with them to say we'll cooperate with them on an issue-to-issue basis, and that we will take over legislature positions so we can hold the ANC to account. And I believe that.
So you're going to assist a mayor whose first speech was to say, don't expect me to do anything. I'm not going to do anything to improve Johannesburg. Those are his words, not mine. Yeah, you think so? Therefore, I'm unclear as to what it is, what outcome you're after.
Well, certainly those are not the words of Action SA, and we do not support what he then said after that, that we must employ foreigners in the Johannesburg Metro Police Department. We're not in that government, Mark. We are not in a GNU with them. We are not in that government. We are holding them to account. We were the first party to hold him to account for both of those utterances. So here's the thing. It really, it's something that I ponder a lot about. Everyone is so excited about a government of national unity with all the parties that are now working with the ANC. But heaven help any other party that works with the ANC anywhere else. So we are not in a government with the ANC. We are holding them to account. And please, Mark, it's been like 5 weeks. You're talking about 30 years of maladministration in Johannesburg. We've been in this thing for 5 weeks. Be fair, give us a chance to see what our position and what our role in this government will be. And we've made it clear that we're not in government with them. We will not go along to get along. And if they do anything that is unlawful, I'm not talking about stupid comments. Those you cannot prevent. I mean, there's no medication for stupidity. But if they do anything illegal or unlawful or corrupt, we will pull out as quickly as we went in. That's our position, and it's 5 weeks old, Mark.
Well, look, and the signs are questionable because already your Action SA appointed speaker has cancelled an interview with me that was meant to happen yesterday. But hey, let's hope that that happens sometime, because it'll be very interesting to hear, because obviously, all the holding to account doesn't seem to have hit any service delivery in any way. And we'll monitor this, because this isn't a problem that's just emerged. This is a problem that's gone on. And as we've discussed many times, residents of these cities have been sitting for years watching the carping and the backwards and forwardsing since 2021 between the various parties that say they've got the citizens' interests at heart, but the actions seem to look different from all sides. And I do understand we're going to go and beat that old drum again. But let's talk about a word you mentioned, which is stability. Now, one of the metros in Gauteng that was achieving an element of stability has been City of Tshwane. And even the Auditor General admitted that things have improved in the City of Tshwane. But Herman Mashaba and Michael Beaumont from Action SA seem to be hell-bent on removing Mayor Celia Brink. Can you explain why?
Okay, first of all, I don't believe it's Herman Mashaba and Michael Beaumont that are hell-bent on it. We've got local structures in Gauteng and in Tshwane. And our local structures, frankly, have had enough of working with the DA. And myself, you know that I was a member of the DA. I resigned from the DA more than 4 years ago for my own reasons. But we've just recently also had experience of nearly 18 months in the multi-party charter working with the DA. And what they say and what they do are two remotely different things. And they simply walked away from the multi-party charter that they inceptualized or conceptualized. And without so much as an explanation or an adios, they just walked away. And I'd been telling them for 18 months that it's very clear that they're two-timing us with the ANC, and they denied it. But it's now become common knowledge that they've been negotiating this GNU for years. So even in Gauteng, I mean, and in Tshwane, it came to Herman Mashaba's attention that the mayor of Tshwane, Celia Brink, who is in coalition with our party and others, had gone to the ANC to say to the ANC, come on board with us, and let's bring stability and bring the GNU to an LNU in Tshwane. Now, the ANC is not in coalition. We are. And Herman Mashaba said, listen, guys, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this backstabbing. I've had enough of this undermining. And now the supreme irony is, now that they've been caught out negotiating with the ANC, they're now blaming Action SA as being the bad boys because we don't want to play along anymore. Now, in any relationship, when trust breaks down and you're being undermined by a partner, and you're working with that partner, but they're undermining you with somebody else, and they want to replace you with somebody else. It's like in any relationship, when it becomes untenable, it becomes untenable. And once trust is gone, it's gone. So that's where we are in Tshwane. And we as a party are taking this matter so unbelievably seriously, because we in Action SA know that cutting your nose off to spite your face is not a successful political strategy. So we're trying to find the very best way to make sure that things happen. But let me give you another example, Mike. which I find curious as well. This week, the leader of the DA, John Steenhuisen, said if the president signs the Bella bill, they will pull out of the government of national unity. So where's the stability? Where's the commitment to cooperation? When things become untenable, they become untenable. And when we've had enough of years of deceit and backroom negotiations behind our back, and it started when Herman Mashaba was the mayor in Johannesburg, and he's got scars on his back from this kind of behavior. When is enough is enough? Only the people that are affected will tell you when is enough enough. So we've got people in Tshwane and in Johannesburg that are seriously sick and tired of being lied to and the deceit that they have to go through all the time. But now we're the scapegoats when they were actually negotiating with the ANC first.
Well, all I know is that we will be having local government elections in 2026. And ultimately, there's one thing that in this discussion, and certainly in our discussion now, that you failed to mention are the residents or the ratepayers. And this hell that we've been living through for the last decade, we've already seen changes at the polls and more are coming. And, the fact is that you may be having your squabbles and they may be justified and you may have every reason to do what you're doing. But all I can say is that as the residents, our patience has worn so thin, and there's going to be upsets, much like we saw in the May general elections, because what you and what leadership may find important, residents might find less important. I have to navigate to work over dongas in what were previously the leafy suburbs of Johannesburg. I have to see open shop fronts in every shopping center in what used to be the business capital. But, as long as you guys are having your squabbles and, eventually get your retribution, good night and good luck. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next election. But that is the disgruntled party boiling over, because there's going to be repercussions, I can guarantee you. And best somebody wins the media game, because right now I can say it looks like a revenge project.
I love it when voters talk like you do. I really, really love it, because, you said I haven't mentioned the voters and the residents. I told you that we're not taking this seriously. I was here in Johannesburg yesterday. We finished our meeting really late last night. We're having a whole day Senate today to discuss this Tshwane business, to come up with the very best solution, to put voters first. But Mike, I also speak from my own experience. I was the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. I was removed through political shenanigans and backroom dealings and being undermined by the UDM. And my party at the time and the UDM did nothing about Mr. Mongameli Babani breaking every single provision of our coalition agreement. And we were removed as a government. We went from being the second worst metro to the second best in 1 year. We were receiving windfall funding because we'd spent our capital grant 100% and accounted for it. The people of Nelson Mandela Bay still regret to this day that I was removed and my administration were removed. I know from painful experience. I own property in Nelson Mandela Bay. I lived in Nelson Mandela Bay. I still work in Nelson Mandela Bay, and it looks like a complete dog show. So I love it when voters and people like you start talking about retribution, and it'll never happen again, and we'll make you pay and we'll make you take account. Because that's the end of the day. People will evaluate on how you work and what commitments can have you fulfilled them. And when that happens, and the voters hold the political parties to account, and they just don't vote for them on the strength of blind loyalty through 30 years of thick and thin and unemployment and escalating crime and all those kind of things, then maybe our democracy will start working again. So I really love it. But I also ask you to be fair about new positions like the GNU, like our agreement in Johannesburg, because it's 5 weeks old. Be fair, and also get all the facts straight, and get people like Salias Brink to come and answer on your program and say, have you been negotiating behind Action SA's back? Because at the moment, we're the scapegoat. We've been blamed for potentially collapsing a coalition government, when in actual fact, it's the DA that's collapsed that coalition government by negotiating with another partner. So don't talk about retribution. It's about honesty. It's about commitment. and it's about doing the right thing.
Just need to correct you on one thing, Athol. It's not now that we're starting to talk. In May, the voters spoke quite loudly. In other words, this is not something that I'm thinking about that may begin. It has begun. Voters are now more responsive to this kind of thing. And this, you know, as we saw in the election with many parties, I suppose the best, obviously the ANC being a glittering example, but even the EFF, when it's a cult of personality as opposed to delivery. You know, voters are tired of this. So, you know, it's just going to be interesting going forward. But I'd like to just,
Mike, I just want to say one thing about that. It's true. The voters have spoken. There's no outright majority for any political party. I spoke about how things have changed in Parliament. But the reality is, Mark, that we had a pathetically low voter turnout in this last election. So until voters, most of them, decide that they actually have power, those that hold the power will abuse it. And the reality is that there was a pathetic turnout in this last election. If you look at the by-elections that took place in this last week, there were, in highly contested by-elections, the turnout was 29% and 20%. So the voters aren't animated enough yet. I want to encourage voters to get more animated, exercise their vote, and hold politicians to account.
Let's go back to Parliament. You know, you mentioned earlier that it's a very different place to the one you were last present at 10 years ago. And I was actually just thinking as you were saying it and as we were waiting to go on air and you were telling me about Parliament being quite different. And I was wondering, you know, something that I haven't really considered before, and that is the role that the burning down of Parliament may have played in actually, you know, sometimes physical things happen and it has ramifications. But while that house was sitting as it was, the ANC seemed to be quite dominant and they had the swagger. Do you think the fact that you now have this crazy situation where one day you're in a convention center, the next day you're in a city hall, and I don't know if you've moved to a tent yet, I know that was on the cards. But yeah, that couldn't have been very helpful for the ANC, I would imagine.
No, absolutely not. And a very interesting observation, because maybe the burning down of Parliament has been the manifestation of a new democratic dispensation. But here's another thing that really troubles me. You know, we still talk about Guy Fawkes, and Guy Fawkes was the guy who burnt down the Houses of Parliament in the United Kingdom.
Well, he wanted to.
It's
the world's most celebrated failure, but anyway.
Yeah. So, and our Houses of our Parliament burnt down, and nobody has been held to account. There was no security on duty. The cameras didn't work. The fire doors didn't work. And an arbitrary soul walked in there and set the Houses of Parliament alight and burnt them down. They're working on Parliament now, starting to refurbish it and fix it. It's going to cost billions of rands. And, you know, I don't know why it took 3 years for them to start doing that. That's just another question. But there is a manifestation maybe that's linked to the burning down of Parliament, and maybe it'll set us on a new path of real democracy where there isn't unfettered, arrogant power. But as I said, we're going to have to watch this very closely, because we now have a new big majority. And if they all just vote together to keep the status quo, we'll be back to square one. But I have noticed in the portfolio committees, people from parties that are in the GNU, they're not just going along to get along. It is a little bit different in the plenary when you've got to vote for your breakfast and lunch and supper. But in the portfolio committees, it's interesting. There's tough, hard questions happening. And yesterday and today, there is some parliamentary strategic planning about how to improve Parliament. So I do think there's an endeavor to make it work better. And hopefully that'll be in the interest of all South Africans, Mike. I mean, Parliament is certainly not the perfect place, and we've got some really embarrassing decisions that have been made in the last 10 years that have not put South Africa first. And if we can change that, then maybe we might have a brighter future.
Now, Athol, you did mention the flip-flopping of John Steenhuisen and the DA on things like the Bella Bill, budget, etc. And one can understand that there's going to be a bit of horse trading at the start. But the danger here, you know, you're sitting on the outside of this, is that they become a rubber stamp and the ANC governs as if they've got a majority, which looks like that is the case. At what point, you know that organization from the inside, but they weren't in this particular situation before. How much more of this can be foisted upon the parties in the GNU before that situation starts fraying, in your opinion?
Well, look, the DA was a very good opposition. I was part of it for 38 years, and there's no doubt, nobody gainsays that. So there's a big hole in the opposition in Parliament. We've got MK that are brand new, they're all over the place. And we've got the EFF that have lost their mojo. So the benches of the opposition are quite decimated. I only have a team of 6 that I lead there. I must say they're professional people, they're new to politics, but we've made an impact. People know who Action SA is in Parliament. There's no doubt about that. And I must say the new GNU ministers have brought competition to the cabinet, and competition's good. And I must commend a number of them. They've done great work. They've already hit the road running, and there is competition, and people are starting to notice that things are certainly different. I've had personal experiences where I've written to the Minister of Home Affairs to ask him to deal with supplications that have been sent to me about people and their passports and the Department of Home Affairs. And I've had a very quick response and resolution. So even John Steenhuisen, I must say, I've been in agriculture portfolios in the legislature and Parliament for many, many years, 20 plus years. I know he knows very little about agriculture, but I want to tell you, he now knows. I have never been in a portfolio committee with a minister of agriculture who is more informed and up to date than that on the challenges that are faced by farmers and people in the agricultural sector. He's made a point of learning very, very quickly. So I'm not the kind of person who's just going to recriminate for the sake of recrimination. I've never done that, and I'm not going to do it now. So I believe that some of the GNU ministers have really impressed. Peter Groenewald, Gayton McKenzie, Velinkosi Gabisa. I mean, I wrote to Velinkosi Gabisa about the state of corruption and just unbridled thuggery that's going on in the Matatiele municipality. He responded almost immediately, made undertakings, informed the MEC to start an investigation and to report back within 90 days according to the Systems Act. So yeah, I think there's some really good stuff that will come out of the Government of National Unity. And I'm comfortable where Action SA is in this parliamentary scenario. We will carve out a niche for ourselves, and we will build a reputation. It takes time to build a reputation. We're brand new in Parliament, but I can tell you by the end of the first 5 years in Parliament, we will have created a reputation that defines what we do as Action SA and as the biggest opposition party between these two big blocks.
Okay, so Athol, here's the difficult question of the day. What kind of reputation is Action SA looking to build? Because obviously I'm getting a conflicting signal as to which, what you are trying to build on as Action SA. What message is it that Action SA is trying to get voters to appeal to voters?
Mark, I belong to a political party where in 1994 they had 7 members of parliament, and they were almost wiped out. I now belong to a political party that has 6 members of parliament after we had a bad election. There was a by-election in Mhlanga, Ward 35 this week. It was a DA stronghold. They normally get over 90%. We got 8%. 600 odd people in Mhlanga voted for us. Now, those are traditionally DA voters. Those people voted for us for a reason. We want to be a political party that offers South Africans who come from other political parties, who are disillusioned with their parties, who are disillusioned with racial background and racial history, or whatever it is, disillusioned with poor performance of the ANC, or disillusioned with the promises of pie in the sky by MK and the radicalism of the EFF. We want to be a political alternative home for those parties. And the best way to do that is to show people through action what we stand for, how we will be honest brokers, that we will be a constructive opposition, that we will ask the tough questions, that we will be honest, that we will have ethical leadership. And that's what we're going to endeavor to do. And time will tell. But I have learned in politics, like I'm sure you learned in business, Mike, it takes a long time to build a reputation. It takes one day to destroy that reputation. And you've got to guard everything to avoid having your reputation destroyed by making one bad decision. But it does take years to build a brand. And once that brand is established, you start getting brand loyalty. So we're a brand new political party. It's 4 years old. And we're already a party that is spoken about. We're already a party that is performing in the media space and in the public space. I'm proud of our achievements to date, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop here. We're going to carry on working harder and harder. And hopefully we as leaders in this party will make the right decisions for the right reasons and for the voters and the people that put their trust in us.
Well, Athol Trollip, it's always great to speak to you. We wish you the best in your role in Parliament, and really, well done on making an effort. Please don't lay off this Minister of Justice. This is a disgraceful situation that South Africa can ill afford at this stage. And please get the Speaker in Johannesburg to finally tell me when she's going to come in for this interview, because I'm dying to hear how she's going to hold this lot to account. But
I've made a note of it. I've made a note of it. I'll tell her right after this interview.
Well, that was Athol Trollip, leader of Action SA in Parliament, one of South Africa's great political characters, joining us on the State of the Nation, which was brought to you by Pace Car Rental. Please go rent a car from them, get a discount, use our special code of SONA, and subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep on holding people to account. Athol, thank you so much for joining us. To everybody that joined us, we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you.